zweiten Lecture von, jetzt muss ich es richtig aussprechen, Georgia Koumarà. Nicht Georgia, ja, völlig falsch. Freue ich mich sehr, dass du da bist. Du hast ausprobiert, ob alles funktioniert soweit?
Ja.
Ich stelle mir das auch selbst vor, weil ich kenne dich nicht.
Perfect. So we close the door, maybe? Or?
I do.
Jemand kommt.
Hello everyone, I'm Koumarà. I was born in Thessaloniki in Greece, where I also finished my bachelor's in the class of Michalis. And then I moved to Cologne to study with Johannes Elfon. I did my master's there, and I also studied electronic composition with Michael Bail. And now I'm still living in Cologne as a freelancing composer. I'm founding member of Collective 3XK, it's an ensemble in Cologne, and we're working together. And yeah, if I should describe my music a little bit, then I have to say that I really love thick sounds. Like the thicker, the richer the sound, the more in love I am with it. And also in general, I fell really in love with the music of Perez and Xenakis and Grisey in my studies here, and it kind of influences my whole perspective and aesthetic of it. Yeah, in general, I could also say that also for extreme techniques, I am really in love with multiphonics of any kind because of the unpredictability of them. And it's also the thing that I will talk about today, this kind of randomness and unpredictability in analog electronic music, and what Kim Cascon called aesthetics of failure. And also I will go into the noise music and notation, and let's see how much of it I will try to do in 1 hour. Because I'm getting a little bit excited about these things, so I will try to be really focused on it. So I will have also time for questions. First of all, because inclusivity is important, I have the feeling that I have a class full of composers here. Do I have any interpreters here? Yes! Perfect! We need you. So I will talk about aesthetics of failure, which in general we would say that it is the way that artists repetitively quote and misuse the program aspects of their medium. That could mean that we try to use a mixer as not how it is supposed to sound, and this creates all these beautiful sounds because of its misuse, and it can also goes to failure. So everything started with a manifesto of futurism, 100 years ago. And then, of course, with Fluxus and John Cage, of course, he changed everything, like the meaning of silence and sound, what is music. And then we had the whole road that noise is also music. And I have some citaten from it, how you could see the imperfections in the paper and how the imperfection, in a way, creates these beautiful sounds that are not supposed to be there. It is failure that guides evolution. Perfections offer no incentive for improvement. And for me that's also very important as composers too, because for the classical education we only think about perfection. And for me it was my revolution in my studies here to go beyond that and try to not be perfect and try to observe what new possibilities I can find in general. So the whole aesthetic of failure also comes with this post-digital aesthetic, when we could also work with how the misusage of, or the manufacturing of the software will also create very, very interesting sounds. Like the computer fan that is also quite very annoying to us, but it can create a lot of things like interfaces, muffled sounds, hard drives, blitzes, bugs, application errors, system crashes, everything that usually we don't want to have in a recording. So it's also like this kind of what could happen if we really use like this kind of accidents to produce more creative kind of ways, like new techniques discovered by accident or of failure. Something that we never intended to do. And then we did it one time and now we're trying like to make it again on purpose this time. And then we're going to a lot of subgenres. If you go to the Wikipedia page, you will find like 30 pages of subgenres of electronic experimental music, which is amazing. Here I just listed like some of them. This is also something that I didn't knew that sampling has like this plunderphonics term, so it was also kind of new to me. Then I'm going a little bit back of the art of noises from Solo and how he was going to, in the acoustical kind of way, describe noises. And now we will have like the parallel of how to do that in the digital kind of way. So the noise music, it started also from Japan, not only, but it really exploded there. And it's in general like the expressive use of sound. Like we incorporating live machine sound, vocal techniques, manipulate video, process sounds and everything, and try to like take all these distortions, feedback, static, freezing sounds to create a massive amount of force, I would say. Like it's really like this. Also, there's a high emphasis on high volume levels, and usually all these pieces of noise music, they're quite lengthy, because usually there is an art of continuation or development. Usually when one is trying to do it in an analog way and it's having like, I'm going from situation A to situation B, usually you need some time, and also to make it musically, sometimes you will need double the time that you were thinking that it will take. So usually these pieces last like 10 or 20 minutes. Usually they contain improvisation, extended technique, cacophony and indeterminacy, because it's not easy to control everything. And of course, usually there is a lacking of use of conventional melody, harmony, rhythm, and rules, or kind of classical rules that we used to have. So we'll talk a little bit about glitz music, which is also a term coined by Kim Gascon in the 90s. And it's a deliberate use of glitz-based audio, media, and other sonic artifacts. So usually you just create, like, from the granular sequences, you take this really spots of sound to create like the glitzes that we can also find in the computer back, like in the video games, in an acoustical way. And they're also like city skipping, electric hum, digital I found like here a mistake, and analog distortion, circuit bending. Circuit bending is when you open the pedals and misuse them and you change how they react. So again, there can be having inner feedback, or they can be connected with things that they wouldn't usually. For example, usual circuit bending is when we try to make them connect with accelerator cables or something like this, or to kind of make them expand their possibilities in a way. Vinyl records and scratch is something that we can also hear from DJ music, using broken devices on purpose, or even like buy them new and then destroy them in a way to make them broken. It's also very nice. And also like this kind of term, it's also the first time I came upon it was while reading Annesley's Black CD from Kairos, and I found it really nice. I didn't know this word in English. Essentially places the unintentional and unplanned as an obligatory element within the process of searching and finding. Good luck in finding valuable things unintentionally. So now I'm going to go like a little bit on terminology, which I'm sure that we have many composers here, so I think that many of you know what a feedback is, what a feedback loop and feedback frequencies. So like an acoustic feedback is when acoustic path exists between an audio input and an output. The loop is when it's sending itself again back. And then we also have like the Larsen effect, how we can, in a way, change the resonance frequencies of the feedback. And it is usually like the acoustic of the room, the direction and pickup, how it will look it, emission patterns of the microphone and the loudspeakers. Distance is also very important, and then Still, we are not sure that it will be okay. Also, we'll talk a little bit about equalization, or simply EQ, the project of adjusting the volume of different frequency bands within an audio signal, and then with this kind of changing the volume frequency, you can manipulate the feedback. You think that we can manipulate it in one way, and then in one room it will be that, and in another room you'll have to change everything again, which is a little bit frustrating but also very rewarding. So, how everything started for me. It was 2019, and I was still studying electronic music in Cologne. And then Niklas Seidel, his cellist of Hamburg, came to me, and we were going to have a piece, I remember, in Festival Essen, Festival Now in Essen. And he told me, like, yeah, maybe you can write a piece for a solo piece for me. But I didn't, at the moment, I really didn't want to write something for cello, and also he didn't want to play the cello for this piece. So I told him, like, what do you have? And he was like, I want you to write something with a whammy pedal. And I told him, great, what's that? So he brought me the whammy pedal, and then I went to the studio, and I tried it with a microphone, because I thought it would be nice to having like the voice effects, because he didn't want any instrument. So I was like, okay, you don't have an instrument, I need an input for it. And then it sounded horrible. So then I called him and I told him, I need all the pedals you can give me. And he brought me everything he had. And in the end, we had this whammy pedal, distortion, and equalizer, and a microphone. That was the setting. And this created feedback with the loudspeaker, and also because this beautiful pedal, the metal zone, the distortion pedal, I think many of you know it, it has from itself like this buzz. So it created a very, very heavy feedback. And then I stayed for 3 weeks in the studio, and my ear suffered, and I think I lost a lot of high frequencies till then. And here there is also a quite a nice small interview that Niklas did, and I think that he explains it better than I do. And there is no sound. But first, I don't have internet. That's bad. Okay. Embracing this. First is this, and then I have to go here. Music for reading and writing. No, I don't want this. I want this. That's nice. And then I have to go here to the sound. Up. I found it. And it's
Might not be up.
it's not this one. Let's see.
Genau, als ich das Stück geschrieben hat, da habe ich mir gesagt, ich hätte gerne ein Solostück von ihr und hatte total Lust, was mit Whammy-Pedal zu machen. Und dann hat sie da Stunden, also Tage, Wochen lang im Studio rumexperimentiert mit Whammy-Pedal, Verzerrer und Equalizer und dann so eine Feedback-Schleife geschaffen. Und ich spiele am Ende nur auf Whammy-Pedal, das habe ich jetzt heute leider nicht mit. Ja, alles total ausgecheckt und ein super tolles Solostück ist daraus geworden. Das Mikro läuft die ganze Zeit eigentlich nur als sozusagen Feedback-Möglichkeit zum Lautsprecher mit. Am Ende darf ich aber auch ein Märchen aufsagen von den Grimmsbrüdern. Die wunderliche Gasterweihe heißt das, ein Märchen über eine Blutwurst und eine Leberwurst. Sehr schön, und das habe ich Ihnen damals empfohlen, weil sie kommt aus Griechenland und hatte Grimms Märchen dann erst hier in Köln kennengelernt und hat die zu der Zeit gelesen und wollte das irgendwie unbedingt mit einbauen. Welcher Text da kommt, ist im Grunde auch egal fürs Publikum, weil man den nicht versteht, weil der durch diese Effektgeräte so verzerrt ist und eigentlich nur so Materialfütterung ist. Und aber natürlich für mich als Performer macht das einen Unterschied, was ich für Text aufsage, und der hat da sehr zugepasst, weil der sehr blutrünstig ist und das Stück auch irgendwie so eine schwere Tiefe hat. Und in unserem tollen Video The Grand Evening of Fearful Excitement oder was, ist das auch, finde ich, von Johanna Meyer sehr schön wiedergegeben, so diese düstere Atmosphäre. Und dann hat sie, oder habe ich, weiß ich nicht mehr, die Idee gehabt, wahrscheinlich hatte sie die Idee, ein Ensemblestück rauszumachen. Der Solo-Part ist dann genau gleich geblieben und diese ganzen Klänge, Feedbacks und die Obertöne und was auch immer da aus diesem Whammy-Pedal rauskommen, die wirklich total raumabhängig und feedbackabhängig und eigentlich nie wirklich reproduzierbar sind, hat sie dann analysiert und den anderen Instrumenten sozusagen so zugeschustert als Tonhöhen. Das heißt, auf einmal musste man diese ganzen Tonhöhen, die fixiert waren, auch wirklich immer genau kommen lassen, damit das in dem Ensemble-Stück Sinn gemacht hat. Das hat das dann immer eine Stufe verschärft und schwieriger gemacht. Und ja, war aber irgendwie eine super Lösung. Dann haben wir vor ein paar Jahren in Essen bei Nau uraufgeführt und dann jetzt endlich nochmal in Köln letztes Jahr zur Aufführung gebracht. Genau, aber bei dem Stück ist es schon so, das hat so ein bisschen Mad-Charakter. Also es ist für Drumset mit sehr vielen Extras, also so Bleche und Eimer und Metall und dies und das. Und die Geige hat auch immer Pedale, der Synthesizer hat auch so sehr so Krautraubenmäßige 70er Jahre oder 80er Jahre Klänge. Also es ist schon eine richtige Krautrockennummer, so ein buntes Band, was sich so nach hinten hin immer weiter ausreizt. Und am Ende kommt eben auch dieses Märchen. Ja, geht ganz gut ab.
Yeah, I told you can sell it better than I can do. So, exactly, there are like two. Oh, that's this music from reading. We don't need that anymore. So, yes. So there are two versions of the piece. Actually, there are three versions of the piece. This is the solo version of 17 minutes. It's the ensemble version with the solo pedalist and the ensemble for 17 minutes. And we also did a 5-minute version for this video, and that's it. Nicholas, I think, played the piece like many times, and also other performers played it. And it's usually, if we find the right distance between the loudspeaker and the performer, usually it works quite fine. The problems we usually have with the equalizer, and we have every time to say like, okay, now this one it has to go down, no, this one we have to change. But I will also talk about that in a bit, like what to expect, what to not expect, and how to let it go, which is sometimes quite difficult. So about the notation that I made for this piece, it was literally a pain. Here is like the whammy pedal. The piece is written for the 4th generation of Digitech, the whammy. The 5th generation is different. I will also talk about that in the difficulties about working with analog effects. And in this piece, I also use coloring, and I also schedule like the whole patterns, and it's quite clear. And the equalizer like this, and the score would look like that. Like you have the whammy pedal, and you have all the Einstellungen, settings of the pedals, and the rhythms. Usually it works quite well. I learned a lot about this piece of how to notate, and how to not notate and what to do usually. For example, I think that it wasn't really important from the solo piece with all these glissandos. It was very important finally for the ensemble piece, because with the whammy, when we had like the 2 octaves higher, the glissando was also matching the sound. But when it was 2 octaves lower, when you go with the pedal and you have an upright glissando, you hear 2 octaves lower. So for the musicians, they could just see that the glissando is going up, and they could hear like a sound going down. And it was at the beginning quite frustrating, but it's something that I'm not sure if there is a solution to that. I'm open to discussions about this, because it's either you notate the movement of the pedal, or the sound, or both of them, and then you have two information that it's also maybe a little too much. Of course, here you have an expert for effect pedals, Sarah Nemtsov. So I will not talk more about notation about this, because she's doing amazing.
More messy with this. That's amazing.
She's doing it amazing. So if you have any question, to her. And now I'm on time. I cannot believe it. I think I'm just like in camp 140. But I will talk about the no input mixing board, the piece that you also some of you heard yesterday. And I will talk about what no input mixing is, why do I love it, and how we can write for it, how can we notate it, and yes. So the short story, the no input mixing is quite new. It starts like the end of 90s, beginning of 2000, the zeros. And it's developed by a Japanese experimental composer, Toshimaru Nakamura. That he started to experiment with, okay, what could happen? I know that that every instrument, every device has like its inside circuit. What would happen if I connect the output to its own input? And it created a feedback loop. And then if you do it with everything, it creates more complicated feedback loops. And then you can also, like having the second channel controlling the first one, you can also connect it with, okay, now I'm starting to get excited, you can also connect it with pedals, it's amazing, but I will come to that. So yeah, there is this on-cue music movement in Japan, and there were like these 4 composers, performers, Toshimaru Nakamura, Tetsuji Akiyama, Sakiko, and Taku Saginobu. So, the basics, let's say. If you want to do things with a no input, with a mixer, and do it no input, you need another one. You need 2 mixers, because the first one, the first thing that it will do when you connect it wrongly, from an output to an input, it will overload. And it will overload so much that it will maybe burn the loudspeakers. And we don't want them. So we built a limiter, kind of. We built like an analog limiter using another mixer to like connect and kind of trying to control the loudness, because the first time I did it, it was amazing but also very painful for a week, so please use a second mixer. And you can start patching and improvising and see how it will react. This is other things that I will also do. And I will also let you see some videos of the pieces I make and how to notate and how to document everything, because the most important thing is to document things with video. Only with the sound you will never be able to remember if it was the first channel, the second channel, or what happened. So usually it's like you have to kind of improvise on it, find something that it sounds interesting and you like and you want to expand on it, think if it's reproducible, and then start to film it. And of course it's a very fun process, so please have also fun while doing it. The thing is, I started with the no input mixing. It was something that I wanted to do after the pieces with the pedals. And the first opportunity was with l'ensemble Limina last year. It seems like a long time ago, but it was 2022, with band for solo no input mixer and ensemble. And the solo no input mixer is playing the percussionist of the ensemble, Miguel Martin, who is also a very good friend of mine. And I went to Basel. He had the mixer. He was just like off-roman, how do you say, like tidy the whole his studio, and we stayed there like for 5 hours and I was documented everything. And then I had to watch everything again and see when he reacted to things. For example, now in the videos you can also hear him react. And of course then I had all this palette of things, and I took like the improvisations that I had and I created the piece. So the piece, for it has like 4 different settings, because of course it's not only that you can change here. If you change the equalizer, it will also change everything. So if you have an ensemble, it takes the time, you have the time to change many, many more settings on it. And it sounds every time quite different. That it's this is in a marking, and it doesn't have an input, and it also doesn't have effects, because the Behringer, that I will talk about it later from the piece you heard yesterday, it's a little bit of a cheating for the purist, because it has effects in it, and it also has an input with a tape. So this piece is like the purist, and usually everyone is using the Mackie because it has a lot of outputs, and it can also sound like this. Like Christmas lighting. It can sound like this. And it can also do vibrato, if you're wondering. Yeah, Miguel really liked that. So no input mixer can be loud, but also it can also be very, very, very gentle. It depends on how we can work on it. Ah yes, of course, and then I wanted to show you the piece that Names played yesterday. For this piece I used there is a tape, and also the compositional process was a little bit writing the tape, improvising on the no input, thinking what I will do in the no input, going back to tape and recompose the tape. And I documented everything, because only using like the glissandos, it's not so easy. Yeah, and I have to run again. And of course, if I'm talking about no input mixer, Marco Siciliani wrote an amazing piece, half an hour, 2002, that he has a really amazing also kind of notation. It's a memory score, and here is also, he plays the it's amazing how he plays it. I can show you the score, I think I have it here. So he works like with, I don't know how many channels, and here you can see how he notated this. And here is the phrase structure. I really want to meet him and talk with him about this piece, because I find it really fascinating how he did it. There is an amazing video on YouTube. There is also like projections on the no input mixer. Please look it up if you're interested in it. And then of course Hannes Seidel, the brother of Niklas Seidel, he wrote a piece for 4 no input mixers. But also Miguel Martin, he's also a member of Ensemble This, Ensemble That. They played it, and they also did a very nice video of it. You can also find it and watch it online, but it's very, very funny. My internet doesn't want to work. Maybe now again. Please. Haha, yes. Come on. So yeah, if you know about no-input mixer, you can hear the Mackie and the Behringer. I have the feeling, I think that they have like very specific sounds, so you can also decide if you want to work with a no-input mixer. Do I want the Mackie? Do I want the Behringer? Do I want another one? I think that, and I'm quite sure that they really do different things because also how they are building is quite different. No, I'm not going there. I'm going here. But I think I wanted to show you the scores. Exactly. So the thing is, how do you write for it? It's a very nice question. And for me, like when I did the first piece, I tried to thinking about like a piano, right hand, left hand, and I use this kind of staving from minus infinity, plus infinity, and here that will be like the zero in the middle. And of course, it's also a question of how many parameters do you want to write for it, because usually there will not be like a professional no-input mixer player playing the piece. Usually it will be the percussionist or people who like it, Alex. So also Niklas played also the piece, also cellists who like to experiment with things. So for me, it was very important to write something that it was easy to understand in terms of notation. So I decided to only have little parameters that they could play, like the faders, here, like these 4 faders, and these 4 buttons, and that's it. And during the pause, when he's not playing, when Michele is not playing, he's changing also the equalization.
Sorry, what are the buttons? Are they?
The buttons here are,
Low pass.
it's like the preamplifier, I think. Like a preamp, I think, if you use it as a normal, it gives a boost.
So it's like plus 20 or something.
Low cut here is like low cut 18
So it's a
dB.
low cut.
But it's not working like that with a no-input mixer, but it's like here you can see it, it's like a low cut actually. And here in the Bergen it's also like a low cut, and usually it's just like again equalization. So I used this kind of notation, and the things that I learned from it is that it wasn't very precise, unfortunately, because things were happening somewhere in between. And if you're here and you write it, for example, wrong page, here, you don't know if that is like, it's 2, it's 5, because the no-input mixer will react different. So we worked a lot with by the ear and with the recordings that we were having. And if you want to make it even more precise, I had the feeling that I needed to find a better notation for it. And this is what I did in the next piece for the Behringer. I tried to create a stave that really resembled here the faders, how you'll have it like minus infinity, 60, 50, 40, and how it will also expand here. It's exactly how you will see it here. Also, I made the glissando lines thicker so that it will be more visible. And the most important thing that I did, and performers will love you for it, I did for every rehearsal number, I gave again what he should be there, what he should reach there. I mean, it's something that I learned the hard way, but it's really so helpful because then you can say like, oh, let's rehearse from B, and you just do it. Otherwise, you have to go to the beginning, find what you changed, What we also did also with Niklas Seil is he put a volume pedal. So sometimes when they were stop rehearsing, he just pushed the volume pedal down. So then we could like proceed rehearsing from there where we stopped, and everything will be there. So that will also be a tip to do if you're interested in it. And yes, also if you like to see for yourselves how it is done, Sarah Berwait and Igor Vasiliev, they have wonderful YouTube videos for it. Igor also made 3 applications also, and there is also an iPad application that came out 3 months ago, No Input Mixer app. You can do No Input Mixer digital if you want to. Or you can go the analog way, which is also nice. So, dealing with this unpredictability and randomness as a compositional material. You have to experiment and maybe also try to find parameters that are controllable. This means that they're kind of stable and could be repeated or could be reproducible. Video document is always great. Repeat it once more to see how it will happen. Priority and importance in what you select from it. For example, is this specific tempo more important? Is the rhythm more important? Can you also again repeat the same kind of tempo? Is the equalizer, is the development, is the timing? You have to find the parameters that could be more important to you, and then maybe leave some other parameters in change, or say that the most important thing for me is to go for a structure that is very granular to a structure that is very, very heavy. And then you can also say, I want to do that in 3 minutes, or you could say, I take the time so that you will go there. Or you can also document that time. But then you will also have to know that if there are like mistakes in it, it can change everything, and embrace the mistakes in a way. And then it's also coming to the point when I also want to introduce Alex and talk about the whole communication. Maybe you can come here, take a chair, if there is, to talk about this kind of notation and how do we communicate on this? Do you have like, because there was also a very nice point in the piece that Alex was like, hey, every time I play this, the mixer is not making any sound in the middle of the piece. Like, yeah, that's right. I really had a lot of time trying to reproduce this not making things, because all the feedback loops overload the machine so much that it also gets heated, and it kind of breaks down. It needs like 1 minute to reproduce the sound. And for me, it also creates a very nice moment and a very nice connection between the instrument and the performer, because you have a silence that is not a silence that is coming from the volume, it's a silence that is coming from the machine. And you don't really know if it will come like in the 27 takts in the 2nd bar or in the 4th. Tell us a little bit how did you find this kind of connection?
I mean, the situation you're talking about now, that of course the first time you think you did something wrong, because this thing is screaming all the time very beautifully and then just does nothing, and then you say, okay, I'm wrong. I checked this several times, but it's really, as we said, it comes back, but after some delay, but it's very irritating because there's suddenly a very loud silence. But in general, it was to perform this is of course a very special thing, because you have to rehearse it like any other instruments. There are things, things that you have to remember physically. You have to get used to how large is the way of the faders, and then which is really helpful in your notation. I mean, these things are lifesavers, and it gives you a nice, really like Pavlovian rewarding moment if you play the thing and then you come out here right. This is really like a little bit of food drops for a mouse in an experimental situation. It's really good, and you want to practice more. So there's, because we're both pianists, we talked about this, so we're kind of used to doing things with different things with different hands simultaneously. So therefore, I think this was not so much the problem. The problem is the thing that you have to practice is that you can easily translate the notation into movement without looking on which number am I now exactly, and is this I don't know, is this probably, this should be 30, no?
Yeah.
So that you feel on the fader where, like, approximately you are at minus 13 decibel. Like if you play a C major chord on the piano, you don't have to think, there's the C and there's the E and there's the G, so that it becomes and the thing is that you can only rely on the physical notation because you never know what's coming out of this. There are some moments which are similar, and there are some moments which are completely unpredictable. This is why this is so beautiful also, but it's not really something that you can rehearse by hearing and say, I made a mistake, because the sonic product is under circumstances completely different even if you did everything right.
Yeah, exactly. But I find, I mean, for me, it's like if we want to play the input mixer as like a piano, we could, but maybe it's not the point for it.
That is also for me one big question, because like you've been saying that you wrote the piece with referring to the piece with the whammy pedal, is that you also then started to notate like pitches for the ensemble when you made the ensemble version out of it. Question is because like, I mean, there is some uncertainty with it. Like, how do you like still write down pitches, or do you say like assume the pitch that you're going to hear, or what?
I mean, for me, it was I had to take like this decision, like, do I do it, like, do I try to translate the whammy and the feedback spectrum in a score or not? And I took the risk because I thought, if it will happen, it will be magical, and if not, either way I have to write pitches. So why don't write, like, try to write the right pitches, so to say, or the pitches that would sound the more appropriate. In any way, there will gonna be pitches there. So,
Okay.
you know, I mean, but for me, it's also something that if I may say that, like, I would say that time, structure, rhythms are more important to me than the exact frequencies or intonation. I said that. I feel like a little bit
How
weird.
much random do you think your pieces if you take this, how much random can there be, or also performance failures? So do you still think this is a valuable performance?
Yeah, I think for me, like, most
I have to ask that.
for me, I think that it is valuable when the performer tries and makes but really, I mean, no, but I mean, it's really like when if I have like a performer who just say, what the fuck is this? Sorry, I cannot do that. I don't find any meaning on it. There, for me, it also doesn't make any sense to work on it, because it's something that it will not collaborate well. But if like, I mean, for me, I think that I'm also quite generous on it, because I'm really focusing on the energy of the piece and some things that, for example, if your hiss is different, then Marco can adapt to your sound, and it will also sound really wonderful. I mean, if the timbre of a piece, the hiss or the hush is a little bit different, the white noise is different, it will still be white noise, and it will still sound beautiful. And usually, if it's different, it will be every time different. So it has like its inner coherence. And it's something that I also quite, I mean, every performance is in a way also like kind of unique. Like we have different performers that are playing the violin, and for years we're having CDs of different interpretation, and for me it's also like an interpretation. And yes.
I have a question about the interplay between the precision of notation. You have quite a precise notation, then there's the fader length, and then it's all the random which comes from the system. How do you think this is the balance between the output and the very much defined notational input?
I mean, the notation is usually like more gestural. So like the fader will still be there, and you will see also like the performance aspect of it, which is also for me quite important, like to have also like this physicality in the knobs. And there is a lot of interpretability, but I have to say that usually I understand that it's my piece that's being played, so in a way it's reproducible in a way. But again, if like the timbre of some noises, it's not exactly the same, it might be also that, I don't know, I'm also not the same in 2 months, so I'm also like losing like some frequencies in 3 years. I will also hear this piece different in a way. And also like the mixer itself, it's a quite new one, it's like 1 year old. If I do a lot of no input mixing with it in 3 years, it would sound also different. Because it will have like burned some circuits or a little bit. It's also like in the computer, like it's a brand new computer, it's a computer that's like 7 years old. You can feel like the difference also in it. But for me it's also like finding a way of how to react with the machine in a very, almost like you would do with an acoustical instrument. I think that you can feel it. I don't know if it's a pianist thing, but we both felt it. Like this kind of, you have like the powers in the fingers, and the machine is reacting to it in a very, very unique kind of way. So I can say that even though the unpredictability it's a risk, why not take it if it's something that, I mean, of course you can also use it to make wonderful recordings of it for tapes.
But with different patching.
Yeah.
Probably slightly.
It will also, I mean, now because it doesn't have the input, it also again it works different. So that's also the thing, and also like this challenge is with analog devices. Maybe in 5 years they will discontinue this model. I have to live with this decision. It's also like the same with the whammy pedal piece. The 4th generation had 2 amazing, really nice bugs. It had like this quite little place when you couldn't hear any sound. They fixed it. And it's also like when you moving the button to change all the settings, like to go from the harmonizer to detune and stuff, it made sound. Now it doesn't. And I composed with the sound that it was making, and it's make like the kind of something like a FM changing thing. So now every time people play the piece, they have to buy the 4th generation, and now it's not reproducible anymore, so it's collected, so it's more expensive. I might have to do like another version of the piece for the 5th generation or 6th generation, because they also applied like in the harmonizer a 3rd and 4th and more things, so it changes like the timing that I would use it. But it can also happen. Also, like in the, they also changed where they put the deep and detune in the whammy pedal. It was up right, and now they made it down right. For the rock musicians, it doesn't matter. Maybe it was better, but for me, I wrote a piece with all the precision of the positions of it. So now I have to reconsider that. But of course, always thinking that working with different pedals, of course, it will bring different results. Working with different mixers will bring different results. For example, also if I take the same Behringer mixer but with 10 inputs and not 12, again it will sound different. I don't know why.
Did you ever try like 2 new ones simultaneously?
No.
Because there could be even a possibility that even the same model from the same year does not sound.
It could be. I mean, then I would have to see if like buying 2 brand new mixers, like out of the box and everything similar, if it would be different. I think yes, because it's also like the way it's analog, so it's also the way that also a violin and another violin would sound a little bit different, I would guess. So yeah, I think that would be the point. That would be also a thing. And now I'm coming to the end of it, and you can ask questions, and you can also play with the mixer. I can send you like the whole slides if you want. I have some recommended books, artists, and websites that you can find things about input mixing, noise music, blitz music, pedals, like from the whole.
Are you going to send the presentation?
I will.
Okay.
Yes. So, also Merzbow. If you like noise music, Merzbow every day. Every day, every night.
So steht da noch nicht Juice Man.
So yes, and in the end, a quote from Bjork. It's so amazing when people tell me that electronic music has not got soul, and they blame the computers. It's like you can't blame the computer. If there is no soul in it, it's because nobody put it there, and it's not the tool's fault. So for me, it's also like to remember, it's electronic, but there is love in it, how it was made, how it was done. So yeah. And thank you very much for the invitation. And now I have actually like some time for all your questions. Do you want to try the mixer?
I have one question regarding like, for example, the piece yesterday that we listened to. I think that sometimes it's a little bit difficult incorporating like this really like ferocious noise of no input mixing or whatsoever, like any kind of feedback with the quite, compared to that quite thin sound of acoustical instruments. Do you think that is something that is, because like quite often you just don't hear it, it goes under or whatever, and sometimes it's also quite nice, but I also feel like that, or what do you think, is it like kind of, how could you work with that, more or less? Like?
I mean, for me also to find like this perfect balance, if there is like this kind of perfect, like the imperfection is also really the goal of it, between electronic and acoustical instrument, that's like the main problem of music with electronics and instruments. So for me it's really again about acceptance and embracing that sometimes there will be moments that these two instruments, let's say, would really merge, really amazing together, and you'll say, oh, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
That in a live concept is also a bit different than in a recording studio, because then in the recording studio you could balance everything and you can also try and equalize everything and make it work. So from the live, it's something that it's usually quite difficult, and for me it's again like accepting that sometimes you can have like this very weird connection with the two of them. I tried to work with the pedals on the bass clarinet, but of course it depends on the whole. You could also hear the acoustic sound of the bass clarinet, because it's also a quite loud instrument. So
yep.
If you have like to not hear the bass clarinet at all, you have to go like 120 dB, and maybe it will be also something for the piece to like play it, and everyone is wearing earplugs, and we're going like really loud. I see Marco there; he wants to do it. So I think that also like I think that it's it's something that in a live context you have to live with it, and in the recordings
You can
it's something that it can be managed.
I have a question also, maybe. Sorry for the sexy voice. You were talking about composing and working with failure and unpredictability, but from the process that you described, I kind of got the impression that you have the failure and unpredictability as a starting point, and then in your process you kind of try to contain it and treat it as a failure in the end. So I was more interested if you could elaborate in where does the failure and unpredictability in your process actually have its home?
Oh, that's a really nice one. I mean, for me, it's also coming from trying to rethink about failure in another kind of way. That there is no failure, indeed. It's just another point of looking at it. What we kind of termed and coined as failure, it's for me a new door with possibilities. And for me, I think that the most important thing was to go out from my classical education also as a pianist, with like, no, the pedal, the soprano and the pedal, and no, I need to do it like this, to have like this kind of sound, to go from this kind of score precision in just the other way of like, hear the sound, react with the sound, and be like one with the instrument or try to understand the instrument. And it's still like when I'm usually known of writing quite extremely complicated things that are in almost like in a tempo where they're almost not playable. So it's again like this kind of failure, or almost like going in a kind of improvisatory way. And I talked a lot with Dirk Rothschild, the percussionist of Musikfabrik, about it when I wrote for him a solo drum set piece. And it was extremely difficult, and we were talking about notation, and this between like, how do I notate this to make you have this energy of exploding, but also give you the freedom of like, okay, if it's not a china, and if you hit a china, but I notated the cross, it doesn't matter. So it was like this, and we were talking about it because of course, if I write it like play like crazy, it will have another kind of energy. If I write this without writing the notes and without writing, now I want you the floor tone, now I want the bass, and just like rhythms without anything, and just like writing, now I want like a bass, and now I want the floor, and now I want like a cross, something like this, it will also not have the energy that it was having. So I really notated everything. I didn't really write freely improvisatory, and I thought that it's in the interpretational things that you have to think that this is almost unplayable. It needs this kind of energy, so I will try to fake it. So this is also like when I'm feeling home with a failure, is fake it till you make it in a way, but like really convincing and really trying to do that. Like really trying to play it. I think that is it an answer?
Yeah, it is. Definitely. There is no wrong answer. It's just something that I also work with a lot, but I think from a completely opposite perspective, that I kind of choose my materials and accommodate the process to set the ensemble up for failure. In a really beautiful way. So I was just interested in where in the process you integrated for yourself and where kind of sits on the chair.
I think for me it's also very important the responsibility of the interpreter, and for me it's also like I want to hear different interpretations. I don't want to dictate how I think it would be. I mean, maybe like, you know, until one point, but then in the end there is a score, and there are people, and there are different instruments and different ways of thinking about things, and I find it always very fascinating when people are playing the pieces and they understand things in a different way than I did. For me, this is mind-blowing. I love it. So, that's dismissed.